Welcome to Us versus Movies. I am your host today, Dustin, joined by the incredible, the edible Kevin Beckham.
What's up, Dustin? Thanks for inviting me to watch this movie.
Everybody, I'm thinking of ending things.
Me
Is the
too?
movie we're talking about today? I have a confession to make, Kevin.
Have you read the book?
No, I tricked you into watching a Charlie Kaufman movie. I usually would never recommend this or a Charlie Kaufman movie to talk about because I'm, I guess, a fan, and I just kind of knew going into this that you would probably be like, "What the fuck did this asshole pick?" So, any response you have is fine and fair, but I will argue to death as that man just.
Well, I was pretty
agrees with me
furious.
wholeheartedly. So,
Uh, uh, you know what? My only beef with this Kaufman guy is I think Eternal Sunshine is incredibly overrated. And I think girls love this movie a lot for some reason. I don't know.
the Eternal Spotless one.
Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely do. It's not my favorite of his at all.
I think it's very, very blasé. If I have
You hear that, Charlie Kaufman? Do you listen to this shit? Blase, motherfucker. He's just like, oh, I'm looking that word up.
I thought if I have to choose, I thought Malkovich was okay, and I thought Adaptation was probably my favorite. Just because I think Nicolas Cage is a treasure to cinema. And have you seen his new movie? I can't wait to watch this new movie, the new Nicolas Cage movie.
Which one? He has so many. The swear words history? That's not a movie.
No, dude, what are you talking about? The one where he goes into the Chuck E. Cheese place and just kills everything?
No. That's too close to home, Kevin.
No, dude, like, you don't even know right now. I've never been so. It's like Drive Angry, but like inside a Chuck E. Cheese, and it's called Willy's Wonderland.
Oh my god!
They're like, "Hey, dude, you need to clean this Willy's Wonderland, and I'll repair your car." Some old scumbag owner said, and Nicolas Cage is like, "Mm-hmm." And then he puts on the fucking uniform and he starts cleaning it, and you see these like Chuck E. Cheese animatronic fucking stuffed animal things.
Okay.
They're all creepy and shit, and he's like, mm-hmm.
Why are we plugging this movie?
It's gonna be fucking amazing. I'm gonna watch the shit out of it. It's gonna be no Mandy, but it's gonna be good.
All right. Well, no, we're moving on. We're not gonna plug this Nicolas Cage movie. Save it for when we watch it.
I'm just saying, Adaptation. I liked it.
Well, I'm a fan of several of his movies, but Sandoce, New York, and Amalisa are probably my favorites. Both hard to say at times, but, whatever. This movie, though, I'm thinking of ending things, is rated R.
Did I say favorites? I meant the only ones I've seen. That's what.
Oh, okay. Well, I said favorites. I think they were fine with that. Rated R 2020, 2 hours and 14 minutes on the Netflix. It is starring Jesse Plemons. Probably not saying that right. You might know him from The Irishman and Game Night. We're moving on, Kevin. We're moving on. No one cares I said it wrong but you. Jesse Buckley, Wild Rose, Fargo. That's good enough for her, right? And Toni Collette, who has a face that's so recognizable that confused her with other actresses. But she was in About a Boy and Little Miss Sunshine. And then David Thwaites. Not saying that right either. Harry Potter. Everyone, Harry Potter. So, and then, of course, written and directed by Charlie Kaufman, based on a book by Ian Reid, which I'm sure is probably nothing like the movie, much like the movie adaptation was nothing like the book it was based on. So,
Charlie should stop reading books.
How dare you?
I dare.
So yeah, it's and this will be an interesting one to talk about because it's kind of
up its own ass.
Sure, I guess is one way to put it, but I was gonna say more in the surreal genre, which makes it a bit daunting to describe every little detail of.
Because a lot of it could be interpretation, right? I
Oh,
know,
yeah, and that's what he does. He's like, this is open for interpretation.
which is fine, and I really enjoy stuff like that. I just saw this after I watched it. It had a lot of people calling it a horror film. There was nothing, a thriller maybe, I guess, just because it had some possibly thrilling moments of uneasiness and maybe confusion. I wasn't scared at any
Yeah.
moment of the movie. I don't know where the horror tag came from, or from, I should
I
say.
don't think I don't think
Dude,
that's accurate at all. What the fuck? What movie did they
yeah,
watch?
I don't know. I just thought that was really odd. Of like, I would probably say drama,
Yeah, I mean, I
liberal
think
with pacing. You know, like,
I think there's a lot of like
there's some tension.
misleading moments. I mean, I think just like I mean, all right, now that I'm thinking about it, I guess I could see it, but it'd
I
be
could
like a
see
horror
it
movie without any
when we
actual
get.
horror happening.
Well, I think it's the build up, right? There's a lot of
Yeah.
tension and intense moments that get created, which are great scenes. And I think before we get too far into it, I think the two main protagonists are, I think they're phenomenal performances in here
Yeah.
to keep the movie just revolves around their relationship 100% and constant, and to be on to take that those reigns between the two of them and to just seamlessly just go for 2 hours and 30 minutes. Like that's
14
a
minutes.
that's a huge ask for the audience to sit through and for them to stay engaging and keeping their performances so just fueled. I thought it was really just kudos. I thought they did a great job.
Yeah. For sure. And I think another element I like personally that I really enjoyed was the inclusion of other media from like
Hmm.
poetry to books to TV to movies.
Hmm.
Like it's all kind of like encased in there, even music at
Art,
some points, you
painting,
know?
art, yeah.
Yeah, painting,
Uh,
art, like just like creativity, other
Fucking
mediums of creativity are incorporated in this. So,
play like Oklahoma.
yeah, musicals.
Yeah.
I think it's more of a musical than a horror, but
It
whatever.
seems like an ode to it of like a I don't know. There's a lot of influence, I would say.
Yeah, well, and that's what I think. I mean, you can say that's influence, but I also think it's just more of and kind of inclusion in a way because it's just like how often do we watch like movies that either talk about other movies too much to the point where you're like, all right, yeah, shut the fuck up, you know, or they don't acknowledge the existence of movies in this movie world we're in, you know.
Yeah.
So, which is
It's
always like a weird thing that I sometimes notice where I'm like, man, we're just like not going to acknowledge like cinema exists in this movie. You know, that's
Mhm.
interesting in a way. But this movie begins with a young woman, as she's titled and credited, played by Jessie Buckley, being picked up, and she's kind of just, I think at this point, just kind of talking about her relationship and that she's just met this guy and just kind of describing the relationship. I'm not gonna like go into boring details and
you
stuff because it
can't be
just
in the
yeah, you just
beginning.
can't. So
She does such a heavy. It's a damn near like a monologue. It's almost a
yeah,
one woman show in the very first 10-15 minutes of her just reciting this moment she shared with this man and how they got there and just the stability of their relationship, the stability of her involved in this relationship. Is it worth it? Is it's so many micro flash thoughts that she just puts out there, and it's so quick, it's so heavy, and to listen to her is you start noticing the dialogue. It's really these are smart characters, and it might ostracize a lot of the audience of the way they speak, their content, like what they're sharing. And it's not apologetic. It just goes. It just if you don't get it, you don't get it. If you do, then keep up. Let's go. We're running with this thing.
Yeah, because I mean, at the core, so she's picked up by her boyfriend, and they're driving to his family's house for some sort of dinner. It's not really established what the dinner is. It is just it seems to be just her meeting his family, and we're given this kind of timeline. They've known each other for 6 to 7 weeks, and what I
So
really love about this scene of driving, because it's like it's very intentionally a car not moving as a because he kind of just like they say that in their dialogue of like that they're standing still in this moment, and that's what it feels like, is that they're just like in this moment. You're going around this car, you're not really, the car's not really moving. And yeah, her back and forth uh thoughts, like her inner monologue to the dialogue she's having with Jake, the boyfriend, is just fantastic, because it just like the editing on that alone had to be just fucking horrendous to do, the back and forth and the switching of inner monologue to actual dialogue. And yeah, they're both quantum physicists, and they're going to his family's farmhouse. So, and they stay here for a while, and they just kind of go through like poetry. And at one point she reads a poem that she wrote. I wish I could say that with quotes. And my God, she just fucking kills it on that poem. And then he's just like, wow, it's like you wrote that about me. And it's just, I don't know, they have this very awkward yet I don't know how to describe it, just like awkward yet close relationship, but not too close. It does feel like a 7 week or a week relationship where they're still getting to know each other, but still enjoy each other's company or whatnot.
yeah, it's weird. So when they first, before she gets into the car with him, she's like, "I'm thinking of ending things," and you're like, "Oh." So as the viewer, you're thinking, "Oh, this might be an awkward dinner with the folks because she's not all in." But is she
Yeah.
all in? And so now you're kind of looking at the boyfriend, Jake, of kind of like, is he a good guy? Like, why is she feeling this way? Is there something he does that's off-putting, or is it, is he too aggressive? Is he a bully? Is he, what are his faults? Or now as a viewer, I'm looking for his faults, and I'm waiting for him to just be this broken person. And I'm rooting for the young woman because she's the first character I met, so I'm,
Yeah.
I'm, I'm all down with her adventure. She's guiding me through this world, or so I
Yeah.
thought.
Or so you thought. And then like intercut in between this conversation, we're kind of seeing this janitor going like about his day,
It's elderly
getting
janitor,
ready.
yeah.
Yeah, very elderly janitor, and he's cleaning a high school, and then occasionally you'll hear a completely different voice, which turned out not to actually be the janitor's voice, but rather Oliver Platt's voice. Um, kind of saying the same statements over, like asking a question, what is the answer type of thing. And and then so finally they get to the farmhouse, and what's clear is that yeah, she's thinking about ending things because she feels like she already knows where this relationship's going to go.
Mm-hmm.
And then the farmhouse happens. And they pull up, and they get outside, and they wave, and the mother's in the window waving, and then they're waving, and they're waving, and there's a lot of waving, and she's like, it's really cold outside. Can we go inside? And he's like, I don't want to go in yet. And like you said, Kevin, you're kind of like trying to figure out what's wrong with, like what's up with this guy? Why is she going to end
Mm-hmm.
things and stuff? And then that was just like, oh, that's peculiar. Why doesn't he want to go inside? And why aren't they rushing down to the door to meet him? Kind of thing. It's just like, what type of family dynamic am I getting here? Because that's when you're standing outside, they're upstairs waving, and you think this is gonna be some sort of family affair they brought him to, but it's just his parents or whatever. And he's like, let's go stretch our legs. I need to stretch my legs. And then they go into the barn, and he gives just a very awkward tour. He's just like, here's the sheep, and she thinks about what it'd be like to be a sheep, and then she notices these dead lambs that are just like frozen. And she's like, what would you do with the lambs? And he's just like, Jesus Christ, what is there to do with them? They're already dead. He's like, we'll burn them when they thaw. And you're just like, oh, that's
cool.
Yeah, that's cool. I guess that's cool. Is that what farms do? I feel like that's not what they do.
Bad farms.
Yeah. And he's just like, do you want to see where the pigs were? And you're like, what do you mean were? That's like, and why would I want to see a place where an animal used to be? And you just see this burnt like black spot. And I guess this is where people start to think like, oh, this is the horror part. Like, because I think sometimes anytime food's involved, people are like, that's horrific. They're eating weird food.
Well, and I don't really think it's so much that. I think it's just the dismissal of life, right?
Yeah.
So there's these people love animals. These are kind of just these cute, furry little farm animals. But he's so dismissive about it. We already think the young lady is going to be in danger. I've only known him for 7 weeks. I'm in this farm in the middle of nowhere. I'm in Oklahoma, literally. And then he's giving you this, he's just acting very odd. And like you said, there's no rushing, Mom, Dad, check out, this is my girlfriend. What I forget her name. Is it just said or something like that?
Well, that's the thing, is her name changes.
It changes
three or four times, if I remember correctly, but it definitely changes at least twice. At this part, I think they're calling her Lucia.
I think it goes Lucy, Luisa, Lucia, I think Ames.
Yeah, at one point Ames. Is there another one? I don't think there's any more after that.
It was like 4 or something. I noted that because I was like, oh, that's odd. Because it starts off as the young woman to us, and then her name evolves throughout the story. But yeah, like I think that's kind of where, and when we just get into the house, there's these like odd placements, almost like these skips in the movie or in time, and it's almost like it's almost like a scene's happening, and then we let that scene finish. We wait, and then the rest of the movie kicks in, and you're like, oh, like why did we have to sit here and stare at that? So I think maybe that's where the psychological thriller horror stuff kind of comes from. But I think if you watch closely, you're gonna be like, there's nothing horror about this. This movie's trying to do multiple things at once, and it's not going to give you a clear and concise narrative. It's trying to represent.
Oh no, yeah, it's not trying to at all. Yeah.
Yeah, it's representing a bunch of different things at once, and then as the viewer, you're trying to figure that out. But I think just confusion and just common popcorn monkeys watching movies, they think, "Whoa, something spooky's happening because it just ain't right."
Yeah, they're gonna burn the animal basement.
Oh, basements are spooky. There's scratches on a door.
Yeah. So, and so he tells this kind of morbid story about the pigs and how they were basically cannibalizing each other and eating 2 of them, and so they had to kill them all and burn them. And you're like, okay, which is pigs will eat anything, especially if they're starved. So. And then finally, they go into the house, and he makes this big kerfuffle about getting her slippers and holding this doily. And there's just, she's like, well, what are you going to do? And he's like, no, it's okay. What type of gentleman would I be if I didn't give you my slippers? My slippers are your slippers. And then he calls for his parents.
Is he going to kill everyone? That's you're just like... You're like, dude, calm down. She don't want to wear the slippers. She's wearing her combat boot things. It's like he's almost overtly trying to be polite and accommodating. Yeah, sure. Where you're just like, does he know it's over? That's kind of what I was thinking, and he's just trying to hold on to her because, he's never cared, or this is gonna be the one in his mind or something.
Well, at this point in the movie, I took it as. Like, I really interpret it as he is not great at relationships. Mm-hmm. And this might be one of his first relationships. And so he probably thinks he's doing everything right. Because I think that's very indicative of a lot of relationships. Like, there are just times when the person that's about to be broken up with does not see it coming.
Right.
Not every relationship, they go, okay, yes, this makes sense. I saw this ending kind of coming. It still sucks or whatever. But there are people that just are truly blindsided, like, holy shit, really? We're breaking up? What the, And I felt like that's what that kind of captured to me, was that he hadn't the fucking foggiest of what was coming, So, and so he's trying to be very accommodating and, receptive to her needs and stuff, because that's just his personality, and he doesn't see how it's kind of like annoying, so.
Mm-hmm.
But then he calls for his parents, and no one answers. And then, they kind of look around, and he continues to call for his parents. And it's just, I thought this scene was interesting in that, it seemed like this was going to be some sort of big family dinner, possibly like a Thanksgiving or something. But there's doesn't seem to be any activity in the house. You're just like, oh, how are they, getting any sort of food? No one's in the kitchen preparing any food, like the mom was just up waving and
exactly. It's weird because they mention it makes sense later on when you get more information, because upon going there, they go, oh, he's like, oh, we can stop and get a snack. And she's like, well, I don't want to get a snack. Aren't we going to eat when we get there? He's like, well, my mom's been sick lately and it's not going to be a big meal. And she's like, well, that's okay. I just, I'll eat what they got and it's no big deal. And when you get there, the house does have this eerie emptiness to it. And when they start bringing up things, their brow, it kind of happens in the same moment, because there's a lot of this, we stay in this environment for a while.
Yeah.
There's a scene where they're like, oh, look at these pictures. And she's like, oh, you didn't tell me you had a dog. Oh, yeah, it's Jimmy or whatever. And then all of a sudden a dog appears, and he's just kind of been there. And then she's like, oh, look at you stinky wet monster. And he's like, oh, he was outside. And he the dog just kind of acts a little odd. And you're like,
well, the dog's constantly filmed in a shake, like he's shaking him off motion. You never see him do anything other than like shaking off his fur.
Yeah, he's shaking off like extra water. Or he's wet, and like he was playing outside in the snow or something. Yeah. And he does it for an excessive amount of time. And you're like, okay, almost like he's a memory or something. And you see another picture on the wall, and she's like, and it looks like a young girl with reddish hair, and what she has, and he coincidentally has some as well. And she's like, who's that? And he's like, what do you mean? He's like, right there, that picture. And he's like, oh, what are you talking about? That's me.
Yeah, he's like, you don't recognize me? He's like, come on, that's me. And she's like,
she's staring at that thing like that's a ball-faced lie. That's me.
Yeah, she was like, wasn't that me? Yeah. Well, and eventually the parents come down, and I think you nailed it, Kevin, because I think the house, I'm just gonna say it. I think the house is, in a way, memories, and I don't know if maybe I think the young woman in this, even though, because there's several times where her clothes kind of change. She's wearing the sweater. She's not wearing the sweater. Her makeup's done differently. Her hair's done a little differently. I almost feel like she's just representing the women in his life that he's brought over. Exactly. And that we're actually going through all of his, almost like if they're sitting down looking at a picture book, and then he's, but it's just the one actress going through all of it at the same time.
It's kind of,
and I could be wrong. Again, it's my interpretation.
No, my interpretation is very parallel, right? So I guess I could just save it to the end when we get there. But as we go along, I would just say you're led to believe that the young woman, we'll just call her Lucy for the easiest part, even though her name changes because it should, is like you said, she's kind of our guide through Jake's history of life, right?
Yeah.
And she is our tour guide as the viewer or the reader. And while it's confusing to her at times, she's holding our hand through it. And that's why she changes. And that's why things change for her, because she's representing different people in his life. Like you said, that's why the names change later on in the story. Articles about her change. She does a really phenomenal job of just slowly changing personalities in certain aspects And I'm like,
Yeah.
man, like, how does this chick not in everything as a phenomenal actress and all these other terrible trash actors are? And like, she is so great.
Well, I think you have to give some of that credit to Charlie Kaufman because it's not the first time he's pulled that type of performance from an actor or an
Hmm.
actress. I think there's a lot of actors and actresses that, and that's probably why they were probably excited to do this type of movie because you
Oh
get the
yeah.
just, I mean, and I don't want to jump to it too soon, but later on there's a scene where they talk about another movie where an actress gets to do such a role and she's doing the role, and it was just like, oh god, the meta on this is fucking,
It's
it's
heavy.
so
Yeah.
thick, it's so heavy, but yet she's fucking killing it. Where you're just like, God, I gotta, game respect game right now. Like, what the fuck, motherfucker? Like, this is good. Um, yeah, I mean, that scene at the end. That when we get there, I'm really gonna gush over that. But so then we finally we meet the parents, and they sit awkwardly in the living room, and they're just talking. And the dad, he's got this like band-aid on his forehead. And it's very like old man bonked his head type of thing. I mean, I can see how they were thinking that's the horror thing because they are a little peculiar.
They're
And
very odd. They're
yeah,
very.
and I think at some point they've already acknowledged and noticed the basement, and she's just like, "What are these scratches? What's down there?" And he's just like, "That was the dog," and and like just kind of bullshit like that. Like I wasn't like, I don't know, I didn't find that door scary. I wasn't like, "Oh God, don't go in the basement." But
Well,
yeah, anyway, sorry.
she even
They're
makes
very,
the comment. She's like, "Oh, I know creepy basement stories and horror movies." That's what it is. Like, and it works on both levels. This could be a creepy basement, and if you have a dog of that size, that dog would scratch that old ass paint like that and probably get lead
yeah,
poisoning.
and then die. So they meet in the base or in the living room, and the dad like just does not break eye contact with her. He's just constantly got his head turned, staring at her, and it's very off-putting. They're very awkward and off-putting, and it's uncomfortable. Like they are uncomfortable to be around. You
Yeah,
can see
they kind of have
Jake's
Jake's like a big giant. I'm so embarrassed. Say something to
exactly,
embarrass
yeah,
me, and they're kind of a little. They're kind of they're hokey parents, and
yeah.
they kind of have a tinge of maybe I don't know. I don't want to say the hills have eyes, but there's a little bit of awkward hillbilly Texas chainsaw on them. Just a scotch where you're kind of
Well,
like,
in
ooh,
the opening, in this part, yes, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, exactly. Because you're looking for them to be like, oh, Jakey, you brought us a new one. We're gonna chop her up like we did the
Yeah.
bag of pigs, and then that I kind of think they're teasing that, but I think just if you're looking for it, you want it to be there, so that's what you see, right?
Yeah. Well, that, and I think it's almost like a distraction because it's
Hmm.
like, as weird as this sounds, I feel like I've been in that scene where you're introducing someone to your parents and you have no idea how they're going to come off. And so everything they do is kind of just like cringy, and you're just like, God, fucking don't. So where, yes, like you put that to the extreme, it's like, oh my God, they're going to murder her and eat her.
Right, right. Because ooh, the house is creepy, and a
Yeah.
dog came out of nowhere, and Jake didn't want to go in. You know what I mean? So they're trying to like, hey,
Creepy. And then they sit down, and of course they're like, everything's came from the farm, and you see this big ham hock, and she just got told that the pigs were eating each other and killed. So, do you want to eat that ham?
but
Becomes
then
the
I don't, I
million-dollar
didn't.
question.
When they start talking, they're very kind of fine.
Yeah,
When you get to the dinner table, I just thought to myself, I was like, oh, I thought she was sick, and we're not eating a lot of food. This is like a pretty hardcore spread. There's like a Jello fucking thing at the end, and
yeah,
there's corn on the cob, and there's a scene they just keep passing food around. I was like, what the fuck? I thought we're not eating a lot, and
yeah,
Jake
exactly.
Jake's very quiet for most of this, and they open up, and Lucy's just kind of like she's ready to kind of just start divulging stuff. She's very comfortable around them. They're not creepy. They engage with her. The mom's a little loopy, but the dad seems kind of sensible. He says some little crass things here and there, but nothing out of the ordinary.
Yeah,
And
like he's very much a dad who doesn't get everything,
yeah, and
because it's
he's not
again they're
supposed
both
to.
they're
They're
both
eggheads.
physicists, so it's like they're farm people, so it's like how can
Mm-hmm.
they relate? And wouldn't someone find maybe a dumb country bumpkin to be kind of creepy because they're just like, oh man, I've heard dumb country bumpkin stories. They're creepy.
Yeah, and it starts like Jake maybe says like 10 words the whole time, and
Yeah, he
and
goes
then
from a chatterbox in the car to just shutting the fuck down.
yeah, and how did you guys meet? Mom asked, and just oh man, Lucy just both barrels and just goes and goes. And even I was like, yeah, Lucy, shut up.
Yeah, I was just like, there's too many details in this story. Like, just fucking cut and dry. Come on. But it's not even incredibly romantic or anything. So,
no, it's just a real common throwaway story. Saw him, he was awkward, he was embarrassed, he was shy, but he had the nerve and he asked for the number, and then he's like, "Atta boy, Jakey."
yeah. And I like the part where she was just like, I didn't like him at that part. And then the parents were just like, oh, our poor Jakey. It's like, motherfucker, she's how the story is. She's there. She's telling
Yeah,
you.
and it's like,
You know?
it's a little bit for us as the viewer to guess she just divulges all this stuff. So you kind of learning more about her in a way, and maybe a
Mhm.
little bit about Jake, but it's more of her. And I think I don't know if it's supposed to kind of make me
Well,
think about her instead of my real protagonist, I guess. I
I
don't
mean, the
know.
thing is like in this scene, she's lost her sweater. She came in with a sweater, and the dinner table, the sweater's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like this is a different young woman at that point because she's not talking like the physicist. She's
Well,
kind of
no,
like,
it is. She's very light and airy. She's talking about
yeah,
art now, and she's like, "Do you want to see some of my works?" She's Lucia at this point because the
yeah,
mom's like Lucy, and then James is like, "No, Lucia, mom."
yeah,
Like, and she's like, "Oh, it's okay." She's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry," and like, mom's almost like pitiful at times, where you're just like, "God,
yeah.
dude, get off of
Well,
mom, you guys are."
yeah, and then in this scene, like every time she tries to give him affection or can lean in for a kiss, he leans away like, "Don't
Yeah,
fucking
like
touch
he's
me," you know?
like embarrassed by them, and don't
Yeah.
humiliate me, mom.
So, but yeah, she's talking about her art and that she does art, and you're just like, "What the fuck?" Like, I thought you had to get back to write a paper tonight, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and the dad's great because he's just like, I don't fucking get art. He's like, I only like fucking Renaissance shit, like photorealism. And then Jake's like, why don't you just take a picture, Dad? And
Yeah.
she's just like, yeah, I do like sceneries and such, where it's like you feel the feeling from the scenery, so like sad or happy or whatever. He's like, how do I know to feel sad if there's not a person there that looks sad for me to know that's what I'm supposed to feel?
Great
And
point.
yeah, which I
Fuck
think
pictures.
fuck pictures, which I thought was great because it's like, you know, this is the movie talking about the movie in a way too, and it's using this
Mhm.
as a way to talk about it. Of like, the movie does not want to tell you how to feel. You need to read the room and figure out how to feel.
Or the
Like,
book.
yeah, or the book. So I just thought that was great because just his delivery to it, because he's actually a really good actor, and to see him play this role where it's like so scaled back and stuff, and I was just like, you're still really good at this, you know. And then yeah, so she just talks and talks and talks, and then finally she chugs this glass of wine, and then like everyone disappears from the room. Like they don't really like show it, but like you can get from how close they once were in the scene to now all of a sudden she's just like chugging this glass of wine by herself, and you're just like, okay,
Well, in the meantime, there's so many little things that we could go over and just bring to everyone's attention. Her phone constantly keeps going off as all
yeah,
these her
and
friend.
showing the name that she's being called at that time, you know,
Yeah, and it's just a friend, and she does answer it a couple of times, and it's still that inquiry. What's the question? You know what I mean? Answer the
yeah,
answers, yada yada yada, and she dismisses it every time. Um, I just really want to talk about the cinematography because it's really, really, really well done.
oh yeah,
There's so many there's so much good symmetry. There's so much great camera positioning and framing. There's a little part that I almost clapped my hands and giggled because they're sitting at the table, and I do believe it's when the phone rings for the first time, or they may be in the living room. I'm sorry, and we're off to the mother's left shoulder as the dad's speaking, and she's sitting down. She's kind of got her head on his shoulder for this weird moment where they're transitioning, and Jake says something, and the camera slides off of the mom's shoulder over the frame. And it's so cool. Instead of like punching in, they just pull out, but it matches tonally. It's almost like a dun dun dun.
Yeah, that's the after dinner part. Yeah.
Yeah, and the way it's shot, it's just little stuff like that I'm a sucker for. If you can position cameras in a normally boring shot, right? They're just sitting around a little coffee table, just chit chatting, and she gets a holiday Dan roll log thing or whatever because I love chocolate.
And you're jumping way ahead now.
Well, it's just they're in that moment for so long, and so much happens. And there's a lot of it you'll see at the table. There's tons of great framing. There's tons of use of color and lines, and just the levels of framing in it, the 3 level, you know what I mean? It's just,
and it's interesting to point out because this is shot in 4:3, which people know as TV, like what TV used to be before widescreen. And I guess he picked that intentionally. I don't know why. I didn't read any more into it. I heard
you do it to focus in more of the screen.
Yeah.
So if it's widescreen, if it's running 4:3, it's so the image is compressed, right? So you're not going to be looking all over. You're focusing on the actors. You're zoomed in, man. Like you're punched in. There's nowhere for anything to bleed off into. You're getting everything. That's usually why most people do it. I can only assume since it was done purposely, that was his goal.
Well, I wonder if it was so he could do some of the framing the way he wanted to, for sure. But I also think because of this reference to older movies and, there's TV that's brought up into it. I just think that it was intentional for like this world to be in that type of framing, so.
Possibly. I know. It's done so well, you're not supposed to notice.
Yeah, exactly. Like you really...
I will guarantee you will forget. You'll forget the 4:3. You're not gonna notice like all these depth of field tricks, all this framing. It's because it's just so seamless and well done. You're not supposed to notice.
Yeah. So she comes out of this after she's drank the wine, and she's just like, "We have to go," because we should mention there's a blizzard going on this entire time because that's actually very important. And so she's very concerned. She has to work in the morning and write an entire paper. And he's like, I'll get you home. I have chains in the trunk, And then she just starts cleaning up the table. No one's eaten anything. Like nothing has been eaten. And she just fucking cleans up this entire table. Like she's just super familiar. And she's like, we have to be going. And you could just see kind of this urgency where she's like she no longer wants to be in this moment, in this relationship, in this scene. And then the mother's like, I made dessert. And she's just like, I can't turn down chocolate.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just like, oh, is it going to be weird? Is it going to be a foot? No, it's just a chocolate log. Yeah, Kevin said.
Foot?
Hey, man, you don't know.
Is that what happens when things get weird? Just feet start appearing where they're not supposed to?
They showed the mom's gross toe, and I'm sure that's what everyone was like. It's horror because of that gross toe,
I mean, the toe was horrible.
It wasn't pleasant at the dinner table. I was like, God damn, Mom, put some socks on. No wonder Jake's embarrassed.
You got that dead toe hanging out.
Yeah. Well,
and the meat was chewy.
Well, I love that part too because she's staring at it like kind of rudely in a way because it's just like, what the fuck's that toe doing here?
That's what we call shock and awe.
Yeah, and the mom's face is so just like, what the fuck are you doing? But her voice is still nice and pleasant, and you're just like, it's like this conflicting, tone and emotion going on. And I was just like, oh, that's some good acting right there. But so they get this Yule log, and they're kind of just like chatting, and they're getting more normal with their chats. It's less like, what the fuck's wrong with these people? She's feeding Jake. He's eating very strangely, but and the dad starts talking. I love this scene because he's like, because the mom says something, and she's cracking up on it, and he's like, oh man, I loved my wife, and he's using the past tense through everything, and that's when you're just like, oh shit, we're in a memory, because they're not actually in this scene. They're talking about this scene. He's talking about when she was laughing and remembering her jokes and how funny everything was, or how funny she was, and that's one of the things he loved about her. And I forget what snaps us out of this scene. I think it might have been the phone call.
The one question to answer.
Yeah, but then like everyone disappears. And she's just like, Jake? And he's just like, I'm taking care of my mom. I'll be down in a minute,
Yeah, he's teleported upstairs now.
Yeah, like everyone has but her. And so then she goes upstairs, and she finds like the old sewing room, and then she finds Jake's room, and it's labeled like Jake's room. Yeah, Jake's childhood room. And she goes in, and then you see some of the stuff they talked about in the car ride over, like the poem, and then the poem that she supposedly wrote is in this book that he's read. And there's all this stuff that they talked about at dinner as well in his room. Like, just, it's there, And it was like, okay, interesting, And then the dad comes in, and he's aged significantly. Like, he is just a very elderly man, and he starts talking, and it's clear that he has dementia. And again, he's just like, or Alzheimer's or something. I forget which one they picked. Like, she mentions like 3 things, and he's just like, yeah, that's the one. But it's just very interesting. She's like, oh yeah. He's like, oh look, yeah, the sign. He's like, you'll notice the rest of the signs, and it's kind of in a way, it's like you'll notice them now.
Yeah, looking back on it, you're like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Or you might be like, I don't get it. Either one of the two.
I understand. But so yeah, he just kind of keeps going in, and he's talking about Jake, and he's talking about like just his awkwardness as a child, and how they just, didn't have high hopes for him bringing anyone home, basically.
Really, just to kind of sum up a lot of it, no high hopes for him to succeed, period.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just in life and work and anything. So, and then, so she gets out of there, and she finds Jake, and he's feeding a now very elderly mother. And she doesn't want to eat it, and he's not trying the airplane game. So. Huh?
That was his big mistake. He should have stepped on that nasty toe. She would have been like, ow! Then he could just pour it all in her mouth.
Boom! Oh, got you. And then he's wearing his diligence pin, which they had talked about at dinner, how he felt that was like bullshit.
And that's the thing, right? They bring up that pin. That's a real rah-rah moment for like the parents. It's like it's kind of monumental to them in his life. And as a viewer, if you don't kind of get something's going on right now, you got a lot of movie to sit through to go, I don't.
You do. You have so much movie to sit through.
and not a lot of different locations, scenery, characters. So you better be fucking getting into this right about then. If not, as someone that did view it, I think you should just call it hedge your bets right there. Because
if you're not invested at that point, then
or if you don't air quotes get it, you might. And no disrespect, it's not for everyone, but you might want to just call it there, because you got another $1.15 of just more shit like this.
Yeah. And so he's like, I'll be down. We'll leave in a minute. I just need to feed my mom. And you're just kind of like, man, how did we, like, and at some point,
totally,
it's like,
he's changed, right? His demeanor is very aggressive about it. He's kind of like, don't make him angry.
Yeah. And he's just very much like, and her tone has changed too, because she's very like, okay, honey, I don't want to upset you. She's very like, different of like I'm thinking of ending things in the beginning to now like, okay, that's fine. Take care of your mom. But just don't forget about me.
Well,
And
it's
we got to get
admirable,
going.
right? That's
Yeah.
it's an attractive quality to her that he's so compassionate and he's not dismissing her because, I think they say us as a society, we store our old people. We don't take care
Yes.
of them. We just push them
Yeah,
off
she
into a
does say that.
corner. And the mom's like, I don't want to live in a warehouse.
Yeah, she's like,
I
that's
kind
what
of
she said.
chuckled. I was just like, yeah, she's it's
He has,
sad. It's
yeah.
sad because she's still cognizant and she knows and she doesn't want to be thrown away like that. But
Yeah.
the way she said it, I was like, that's what we do.
And then this great scene, and we should point out that she's back in the sweater now at this point, because that was striking to me. And the sweater is just it's an unusual sweater. So, and then she starts going down the stairs, and then she keeps going down the stairs, and this is like I think a 3-story house, but we only actually go to the first and the second floor. And then so she goes down the stairs like maybe like 10, 15 times, something like that.
Well,
And the whole time she's like talking to herself and she's back in this like I'm going to end things, it's nothing. He's a great guy, it's admirable, blah blah blah, but it's just I know where it's going and it's not going anywhere.
and then also we should have mentioned the parents are changing before they go to Jake's childhood room. They're slightly changing through dinner at different age variations of them as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
It's
Yeah, the
very
mom ages at some point like bad.
yeah. In her hair is also kind of presented a little bit differently. It's very subtle, but if you're paying attention, it happens. You're kind of like, bro, that's still the mom, right? Like, did she
Yeah.
look different or
Oh, and
maybe
I
it's
think doesn't the dad
they both
de-age
they both
in
do.
the
They both change constantly.
yeah.
It's
Well, I
very
mean, like
it's
when they get to the living room, doesn't
Mhm.
he's much
Yeah.
younger and then she's much like older still. So
Yeah. There's a one where she goes really young, while we'll just say Lucy for now is in the house.
yeah. Well, that's what we're getting at because so when she gets down there, um, the dad comes back and talks to her again for a minute, and then she's thinking about the basement, and the mom comes in and she's very like 50s housewife. She's like, oh, I'm just so tired. And she's like telling her, don't let him, don't be afraid to do what you want to do, and don't let him like push you and bully you around. And it's very much like, do you mean in this moment, in this relationship? But like you can take that several ways. And then that's when she decides she's going to the basement. And again, we're still getting some intercuts of the janitor, which is worth mentioning because when she gets to the basement,
Well, there's a great intercut of the janitor, just doing his daily. You kind of just follow him doing his daily routine, like you're just a fly on the wall kind of style, and he's watching this rom com from Robert Zemeckis. He's just sitting there eating his sandwich, and it's on this. He's in this little break room thing he's got, and he's just watching this couple. And
and
there's
what's
this
great is because that's on widescreen in the movie.
exactly that's
Yeah.
4:3, and you're watching it, and you're in this diner. This lady's she's a waitress and taking an order, and this guy's just like looming over her, and then he's like, "Well, what can I do you for?" This is Dullard. He's behind me. He's going to be taking your orders while he's training. And the old guy's like, okay, how's the Santa Fe burger? And then the guy's
Just
like,
classic old person. Like, tell me
yeah,
which is your favorite between
what's your
these two
favorite?
damn near identical things. And you're just like, man, I don't know, fucker.
And the waitress is like, oh, this and that. And he's like, oh, okay. And then the boyfriend or the boyfriend to be looms over her, and he's just like he just starts cutting this little monologue of how she's great and he loves her. And everyone
Because she's
starts
a vegan and she's going to fucking animal cruelty law school or some shit.
yeah.
It's so great. And just like, I was just like, this is a great movie in a movie.
And you're kind of, and you stick with it for a little bit. And the owner of the diner, he's like, hey there, Josie. And he's like, that was really beautiful. And the guy was like, I love her. And he was like, you're fired. And she's like, oh. And they're sitting on the curb. She's like, did you really mean what you said? He's like,
Well, she's like,
what?"
I needed that job, idiot.
Yeah. And then he's like,
I
do
know.
love you."
Did you say you love me, idiot?
and they hold hands, and then that's kind of it. And that's more pulling back for the janitor's character. And if you're paying attention to the movie, it kind of will help with your interpretation, right? Because it's a fucking coffin movie, so he's not going to be like, "This is the answer." He's going to be like, "That's whatever you want it to be." Fair moviegoer.
Yeah. Um, and so yeah, I think I forgot to touch on the Oklahoma thing. So there's a great scene where she's like, "Oh, I didn't know you liked musicals," because he says he watches Oklahoma like twice a year. And the way he's talking going all the way back to the beginning where he's talking in the car, he is describing things that the janitor is doing, that we're seeing the janitor doing.
Mm.
He's like, I see these kids, and then like years later, I see them like working in the stores, and I remember them from their performance in Oklahoma. And and the great thing where he just like sits there and lists all these musicals. He's like, oh, I wouldn't say I'm a fan of musicals, but I enjoy blah blah blah. Like all the greatest hits come out of his mouth. And you're just like, what the fuck?
Someone that enjoys something knows a couple of things about it. Yeah. This guy's a fan because he knows all of them. He knows all the big player. He kept going, and she was just staring at him. And I was like, listen, man.
Yeah, after like 7, she chuckled like, that's a lot. And then he just was like, I'm not done.
Mm-hmm.
But so when we go into the basement, she goes down there, and the audio, like one of the things I love about a coffin movie is the audio, because he plays with the audio intentionally as well. And so he goes in the basement, or she goes in the basement, and Jake's yelling to her like, you don't have to go down there. You don't have to do laundry from him. Oh yeah, the dad is talking about, like, we skipped over the part where the dad's like, you guys can stay in this bed. It's a little small to be doing fucking in, but you should be fine for 2 adults to sleep in. He's like, just don't do any fucking. And he keeps saying it like that, like, just like, don't do any fucking.
Almost like he can't remember he just said that.
Yeah. And then he gives her this, like, really old nightgown with, like, food on it. But you don't know it's food until you see Jake feeding his mom the same shit. And it's just like pea soup, basically. And she's like, you don't have to do laundry for my mom, like, come back up here. And then she goes down and she just opens the washing machine, and she just starts pulling out these janitor uniforms. Like, it's the janitor's uniform. We've seen the uniform on them now a couple of times. You're just like,
it has like the name of the company and the school or something, like on the breastplate.
I think it's just the school's logo, like an R, and it says like RHS or something on it. And she just keeps pulling them out. And then she hears something, and then she just like puts them back in. Like, she gets like a weird flash of the janitor almost like watching her. And then she puts them back in, and then she goes back upstairs. And then there's Jake with his mom, and she's in a hospital bed, just like mouth open, eyes open. And he's kind of crying, and she's just like, oh, is she okay? He's like, she's just resting, like he just hasn't come to terms with his mom's passing. And then they kind of share a scene, and he's just like, all right, we got to get back on the road. Let's get, help me with the chains. And they just kind of leave that scene. They get on the road with the chains, and they kind of like regress back into the first scene's characters for a minute. And then he's like,
it's almost as if the house never happened, right? It was almost as if they never even had this interaction. It's just kind of still this daunting need to go, gotta go. Like, she's just still kind of fascinated with that.
Yeah.
And he needs a sweet treat.
He needs a sweet treat in a blizzard. And God, I forget what the place is called. It's like Tasty Queen or something. It's basically just like definitely Dairy Queen.
Yeah, they probably couldn't. Yeah, they probably be like, we can't call this.
Oh, it's like Tulsi World or something like that.
That's Tulsi Town, dude.
Tulsi Town, yeah. All right. And then he sings the fucking Tulsi Town song.
Little jingle
thing. And it is like, and again, it's one of those things where it's like, at first she's like, oh, that's fun. And then he does the whole thing. And you could tell she's just like, what the fuck? And I think so they stop. It's after they stop that.
Well,
Before she switches the character again, right?
no, before they stop, they do the whole a woman under the influence like
Oh yes,
riffing, and
yeah.
she just kind of checks them. They do the switch, or she switches, and she just
She
goes
starts
on this real
smoking.
Roger Ebert fucking like rip of this movie. And he's like, I don't know, I kind of like this part. She's like, well, you would. And she just dissects this character, its motivations, the problems, the loop. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she's got a promo in this movie.
And she's done it in a completely different voice. She has like this swagger and demeanor to her that has not been in the movie up until this point. It's so great. Yeah, it's probably like, I want to say it's probably her best acting in the whole fucking movie, because I was enthralled. I was just like, yes, tell me more, because it is. She's just like, she's talking about this movie and this actress in the movie, and kind of playing homage to them
All
and
at the same
talking
time.
about them. Yeah, all at the same time, just like, and like you said, yeah, she just totally just checks Jake. Like Jake becomes a different character at that point too. He's much more timid. He's like, oh, okay, like he's just like, it's like they flip their roles in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get to Tulsi Treat, and it's this little shack in the middle of a fucking blizzard, and she's like, are you sure that this is open? And then Jake goes back to being really fucking weird, because they go up there.
He won't go near it.
Yeah. He won't go near it, and he says...
Then he does. He needs to see who's working that night. He's like, well, sometimes the girls are here, and, I don't think some of them like me, but I just need to know. It's almost this weird, like, obsession with it, but then he pulls back when he sees them. He's like, like, almost like they make fun of me.
And will not fit. Yeah, it's weird, because they... And it's two of the girls we saw in the janitor scene in Oklahoma.
Yeah, they're rehearsing Oklahoma in the auditorium.
And so, and he's just like, it's very clear through Jake's dialogue that he stops here more often than he lets on. Mm-hmm. And that these people all know him. And so she's just like, okay. And then so she's like, hey, we want to order. And these girls come up, and they're just very, I guess, just mean girly. They don't even acknowledge.
They're kind of
Lucy at all.
They're a little creepy-ish, just because they're so. They're not giving good customer service.
No,
for one.
Yeah, so they're not doing good customer service, and they're both manning a window. And so she's just trying to get her order, but they're just sitting there giggling and kind of just staring at Jake, who's very uncomfortable, and you don't 100% know why. Is it because he, is attracted to these young girls?
Yeah, I thought he was. I thought the movie was going to go dark, and I was like, ooh, he's been cruising for some young action, and they kind of know him from around the way because he pays them, and then they do weird old guy stuff to him.
That is so not the right movie. But
dude, I didn't know. I thought I didn't know. I was like, is this why she's going to get rid of him?
See, I took it as like we have at this point gone to some possibly like an even earlier relationship where he's not that far removed from this town. He's seeing possibly people he went to high school with.
Like, well, if we're breaking down synopsis, and I agree with you, then that's the rejection. That's his rejection, right? So he probably grew up with those girls or had those thoughts, and they just shunned him. Yeah. And he had to get this third girl, or maybe that was the one that would give him the time in a day, but she was clearly awkward and had, blemishes upon her body. So she's not perfect like these two girls are supposed to represent. This quest of what people would deem, a goal. A trophy.
Well, and they've mentioned now that in movies intentionally use beautiful people and stuff like that. So, we're seeing that like there's beautiful people in this one, and there's normal looking people, and stuff like that. But so this third girl comes, and she takes the order, and she has rashes all over her body, and I'm just gonna keep calling her Lucy, or the young woman. Basically, is looking at her very concerned. She's like, "Do you need help?" And she's like, "Sorry for the smell. We're varnishing back there." And this is probably like the third time we've heard that, because Jake also said the same thing about Jimmy the dog, he said, "Sorry about the smell." You know,
Mm-hmm.
so it's like it's become a reoccurring theme and line through the
And I was
movie.
like, "Ooh, are they making meth in this Tulsi town?" And that's what they smell.
Tulsi Town meth.
And they're making the blue ice or whatever the Breaking Bad guy makes.
I mean, I'm sure they just call it the Tulsi Crunch. You
Oh,
know. But so she makes these DQ blizzards because that's what they are. And they're even like making that joke of like, hey, we're gonna blizzard in a blizzard type of thing.
I didn't
Or
laugh.
they call it a burr, which I kind of liked. I was like, I'd eat a burr. So
No, you wouldn't,
and
dude. It would kill you. You would just
no,
die right there in the blizzard.
I'd still eat it. I might
Yeah.
shit my pants while driving, but I'd eat
You would
it.
eat it like they ate it, and they didn't touch the shit at all.
Yeah, and it was very unappetizing looking after that. And so yeah, and this scene is just very it's another very peculiar scene because it's like, what is his relationship with this building? Because it's clearly just sat out by itself.
Oh, well, another thing is if you pay attention, there's a precursor to every experience they go up to. It's like
Yeah.
the ideology of beauty and goals and stuff, and the way we see people in movies, and they mention it, and then it kind of happens, and it's almost like these are the haunting characteristics that Jake deals with, and that he's struggled with his whole life. And in all honesty, Lucy is representing those possible relationships, like you said, loves in his life, and she's our tour guide through these moments from him, because
Yeah.
he's reflecting on all these thoughts. Everyone does this. You think back to that one, oh man, if I had that one girlfriend or boyfriend at the time, and then if it would have been different if I would have done X, Y, and Z, or oh, I remember that one time I couldn't talk to that girl because whatever that guy, and he's we're kind of getting that tour through him, hence the reason he changes, because he's reacting to how he would have reacted back then.
Yeah. And that's also the interesting, like you're absolutely right about the precursors, because even the ending has a precursor. You know, as strange as the ending is, you're just like, oh no, that was totally like they fucking say that like right before that. You know,
It's all the same topics that keep coming around, just presented, from the smells to the pig references. That it's all there. It's all parts of his life that were big to him, and it's all, and you're seeing it, and that's why the people are changing. Those are different times he's dealt with his mom and his dad, and
and the mom being sick, and and
yeah,
the dad
and
losing his mind, and
exactly. So it's just like you can debate whether Lucy is a real character, or is she a memory as well, just representing all of these collective of memories, that he's going through, and he's kind of acting them all out, all these moments in his life, because he never changes to that extent. He only changes really once in the whole movie.
I think like his clothing changed once. Yeah, well, I mean, his clothing changed more than once. Like his clothing subtly changes. Yeah, but physically,
he only changes once, while the other ones kind of change constant, like a memory, and how you choose to remember it, and how
memories are fuzzy, and you're just like, did they look like that, or did they look like this? And so and then so they get back in the car, and they're talking more, and it's very clear that this is, the young woman is a different person, because now we're talking about how they met again, and she's like kind of playing dumb to him, where in the beginning she would not like play dumb with him at all. And he is just very, very bothered by these burrs that they have refused to eat, and the young girl gave them extra, which I was just like, what a waste. I was like, oh, so there's only one size? That's a big burr. And he's just like, we have to pull over and dump these somewhere. And I'm like, listen, buddy, you're in the country. Like, fucking, if it's bothering you that much, it's a blizzard. Just throw it out there. Like, no one's gonna give a shit.
And that's another thing. I kind of like the way it's really hard to do fake snow in movies where you're just not like, oh god, that's so fake snow. They did actually a great job, and to me, the blizzard represented the kind of the foggy memory, right?
Mm-hmm.
The all the thoughts, and he's just focused on these thoughts, and you don't remember them correctly, or you blur another person in the role, or you were with this other person, or they made you feel this way, and I think the constant fear of the snow just kind of always looming. And I think that did a really good job of just kind of, it's a little Silent Hill. Silent Hill always has the fog. You don't know what's in there. You don't know what you remember, and that's kind of, it reminded me that in that same vein of just that little sense of confusion and bewilderment. And they, the fucking Frosty Freeze, it's off in the middle of nowhere. She's like, dude, where are we going? And he's like, well, I want to get rid of the schools up here. And you're like, what? These are just big pinpoints in his foggy of his life, of remembering everything. And because she's constantly like, bro, I want to go home. And he's like, one more stop. It's like, no more stops. Fuck this. Again,
because her theme keeps coming back. I'm thinking of ending things, I'm thinking of ending things. And so she's just trying to get to the end of the fucking night, like she's like, God, just get me fucking home so this could be over. And I felt that, I could feel that desire for
why would this movie fucking end?
No, not with the movie, but like to be done with this person, and you're just stuck with them for more and more. So yeah, eventually he drives down this road and she's like, I don't think we should go down this road. And it's great because she's like, it's more of like, I don't think we should go down this road of thought, but she's like, we're going, he can't back. He's like, the road's too narrow to back up and go back down. And then eventually they get to his high school and he's just like, there's a trash can over here. I'll throw him away. And then he looks in the trash can, and for whatever reason, he puts the lid back on and he just disappears. And she's like, where the fuck are you? Like, where are you? And eventually he comes back. He's like, sorry, that bin was full. I knew there was a dumpster like around the corner. And you're just like, why would you why would you know that? Why would you remember that? Like, how often do you come to this high school? Like, what's up with you in your old high school? And then they're in the car and he starts to kind of just get close to her and kind of kiss on her a little bit. And then they kiss, and then you just like have this cut of the janitor like looking through the hole, like a hole in a wall in a way, and it's like a little creepy, and I guess this is where people get the horror from. And he's like, did you see that?
People have given up on the horror when it gets to this part of the movie. Like, if you still think it's horror, you're just this. There's no blood. There's no guts. No one dies. There's no music spikes. This is not a horror movie at all.
And so he's like, did you see that? Someone's looking at us from that truck. He's like, no, I'm going to go tell them, I'm going to go tell them it's not right and they shouldn't do that, And she's like, no, just like, let's fuck off. Like, let's go. And then he goes behind the truck and he just disappears. He doesn't come back. And she gets tired of waiting. She's waiting. She gets out and fucking locks herself out of the car. So she has to go find him. And she goes into the high school and yeah, I guess I can see like the weird, like, yeah, this is there's these weird, like, if this were a horror movie, this would be build up to it, but it's not. So I get why they say that, but I just don't understand why they would continue to think
I don't get why they say it. I think it's terrible. Yeah. I just don't think you're understanding what you're watching.
No. And so she sees the janitor, and it's more, she's just like, oh, why is there a janitor? Why is there a janitor waxing the floors in a blizzard? And she's just kind of like hiding out, and then he finds her and he's just like, hey, what are you doing? And she just starts talking to this janitor like she's known him, and she's like, I'm looking for my boyfriend. And she just like tells the story of like this guy, and like she's thinking about ending it and stuff with him, and then she just goes back to looking for him. She's like, I'm gonna go. And they give like an awkward hug, I think, or something.
She hugs him.
Yeah, she hugs him.
He's like, here are your shoes so you don't scuff up the floor.
And it's the slippers. Yeah,
the slippers
from before. So, and then she ends up in the gym where there's more snow. And oh no, I'm sorry.
No. She turns the corner and it switches again. This is like super where everything switches, right? So you see a different version of him and a different version of her, and they kind of break into this dance.
Yeah, they're basic, and I don't know Oklahoma, and that's the problem is like Coffin wants you to know the source material he's sourcing. So I would not be surprised if this entire dance was from Oklahoma, and that he was just like, and now do it in a high school hallway, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so they do that. They did this very long dance. It is not short at all. Like it was very long, and it was very late at night, and I was just like trying not to. I was like, is there some detail I need to watch here? I don't think there is. I think they're just dancing for a while.
Fuck you, movie. I'm sleepy.
Yeah, I kind of was at that point. I was like, come on, man. Fucking just get me there. Let's go. And then eventually they go to the gym, and the guy, I think it's the guy. Yeah, the guy falls down, and she's just like staring at him.
Well, the guy falls. No, they have a scuffle with the other. There's another janitor.
Oh, yeah,
there.
like the beautiful janitor. So
yeah, he's like, and they're doing almost this like Oklahomian dance.
Yeah, it's like a dance
fighting.
Yeah, and I don't remember. Does he like? Oh yeah, he stabs him, and then like just stabbed. A bunch of like a bunch of paper comes out basically.
So my dear Dustin. So they do the fight. It's this real choreographed fight. Jake's character loses the fight to the janitor, almost giving up those dreams of being with her or having that relationship, and he like bows down to it, and he does these red Kleenexes in the air as blood is representing blood spurting from his chest, and we already have the blizzard inside the school that's taking place. It's real AEW entrance of Sting, the fake snow falls and everything, and they're fighting within that, and then he lays there dead, and then the Lucy that we've been kind of following for most of the movie kind of walks in there as the janitor, and the other younger Lucy disappeared, pretty janitor and young Lucy, dancing Lucy, and she just kind of stands over the slain Jake.
Jake, yeah.
Yeah, and then she just stares, and they stare and have a moment, and
yeah, well, and then normal Jake shows up, and they're both just staring
at the slain
dancer. Yeah, slain dancer Jake.
Yeah, that was when you were young and spry and you had the world at your fucking fingertips, man. And then you woke up one day and you're a fucking janitor and you don't know where it went wrong, but you do have these memories, but they're so old and blizzardy and clouded, but you remember some things. And if you would have went left instead of right, fuck.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I think we're getting left and right, because there's also, this is where we kind of also learn that it's not Lucy's or the young woman's movie. It's Jake's movie.
And no, honestly, if you're paying attention, you know that from the jump.
Yeah. Oh,
they tell you this movie. I'll let you finish, and we'll go into it.
Because there's a line where it's like, she's like, "Am I just here to support him?"
Mm-hmm.
And then you see him go out on the stage. It's like an Oklahoma stage. You know, they're basically in the high school still, and he is accepting a medal, and it's not
the Nobel Prize.
It's a Nobel Prize. It's not the Diligence Award this time. It's not that bullshit. No, it's a Nobel Prize. And Jake looks very confused, but he's just so honored, and he looks out, and there's Lucy, like, but she's aged. Like
the whole audience
intentionally bad. Yeah, the whole audience is aged, but like intentionally, like very noticeably, like, you know, with the dark makeup lines and stuff like that, which I thought was actually very, you know, just interesting and clever. And they're all just clapping. And then, yeah, she's just kind of like, was I just here to support him? You know, like this woman that we learned in the beginning had all these own aspirations and goals and everything. And now she's just like the supporting wife to Jake.
Exactly. Well, it's the beautiful mind scene, right?
Yeah.
And he basically does that monologue a little bit at the end, and she stands up and claps when he cuts the promo of like, "It's been a beautiful mind. Thanks, Ron Howard." And she's just like, yeah.
She's like, yeah, fucking take Han Solo.
But then when you go back, you're just like, did you call him Russell Crowe or I love Han Solo? What did you say?
No, I said tank Han Solo.
Oh. the movie, everyone, Han Solo. I was thinking
Someone
anytime
knew and got it.
no, because I don't, because now my association, my
Ron
favorite
Howard came in and
Oh, I
redirected Han
I
Solo.
know it was a terrible movie. I get it. Um,
That's what you get when you have Ron Howard come in and direct a Han Solo
dude,
movie.
come on, dude. He did Arrested Development sometime with some stuff. He made me laugh,
Yeah.
and my mom used to watch Andy Griffith all the time, so I just forced to like this
Okay,
guy.
we get it.
When
And you love A Beautiful Mind.
who doesn't? He does that because that's one of the DVDs in his bedroom. When you start going through, when the old James's dad was like, oh, we started labeling everything because it's hard to remember, because every cloud has a yes, that's it. Well, what I was going to say is my favorite Han Solo memory
What the fuck?
is when they ask Harrison. Somebody asked Harrison Ford what Han Solo's favorite color was. And then I saw they were like, Harrison Ford just wanted George Lucas to die. And that's so wrong how I'm telling the story, but I laugh. I just picture Harrison Ford trying to kill George Lucas for ruining his life by making him Han Solo. Because I think Harrison Ford hates Star Wars. He hates Han Solo. I think he hates. I don't. Yeah. I think maybe Han Solo was, or Harrison Ford was like, "This is cool. I should have stayed.
This won't last.
You should have killed me, George."
I really think that they should have respected my wishes and killed me in the second movie, and instead of pulling my contract card in the third.
I saw some random thing where they asked Harrison Ford, and he was like, "Is he a ghost in the new Jedi movies?" Harrison Ford was like, "I don't fucking know.
I don't fucking give a shit no more. Okay, where's Indiana Jones #5? I just want a big paycheck.
What an angry.
I want to fly more planes than doctors on golf courses. Okay,
an angry old bastard."
Clarissa, remember when you married me to kill your career?
Dude, she
That's
killed her
supporting
career.
a husband.
He sucks. Back to something that doesn't suck.
Yeah,
The Beautiful Mind. Let's talk about that.
Jesus. And so you kind of like, guys, stay till the end, and now I don't remember the end. Fuck.
Well, they do that. He does the Beautiful Mind thing. He does the Oklahoma song, and you try not to get into it, but you end up doing it a little bit, and you're like, I swear to God, Russell Crowe better not pop up, and he doesn't. And you're just like,
it's not A Beautiful Mind, but okay.
Well, he says that. Well, there's a Beautiful Mind-esque vibe.
Yeah, all right. I'm just saying that might be more of a Kevin.
No, dude, that's he does the speech from the Nobel Prize speech from A Beautiful Mind.
He doesn't say anything.
Yeah, man. They're kind of embodying the scene. That's what it reminded me of. I don't know.
I get what you're saying. I'm just saying.
I could be wrong. I don't know. I don't know movies.
I think you're billing it too much towards a Beautiful Mind. I don't think Charlie Kaufman's like, you know what? Fucking Beautiful Mind this shit. Let's go. Because it's very much more about the crowd and the audience at that point watching him. These are all the people in his life seeing his accomplishments, seeing what he's done. That's. I feel like the scene kind of focuses more on the audience than him, because we're in the audience every time we see him, but when we see the audience, we're up fucking close on them. So anyway. But I think that, like going back to what you said, where it's like we're seeing like janitor on the left, Nobel Peace Prize on the right. I do think personally that, I mean, I think that's kind of like the janitor is him in another route of his existence, where he could have won a Nobel Peace Prize and had a wife, or been a lonely janitor staring at kids doing Oklahoma every year. So
I think that's what you are witnessing. I don't think he ever made it to those heights. I think he is that janitor. I don't think there's no alternate timeline. It's just, this is the life he chose, and he's thinking of just those big monumental moments in his life where he chose wrong.
Yeah, could be.
Because he in the whole car conversation, he's dominated in almost in every conversation until he has the outburst when it comes to movies, when it comes to the whole like the Christmas song, that's a rape song. Like he doesn't get a lot of things. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah.
Like
Forgot about that.
he loses in all these dialogues with her, and she's that constant voice of like, this is it. And when he goes to those old places he revisits, he's scared. Those are the girls that he couldn't have, or he couldn't, you know what I mean? He's a townie. He's a trap townie. He never made it. He constantly thinks about it, and he dies. He dies alone, and that's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He dies as he lives, sad, pitiful, scared, afraid, and he didn't do shit. And he had a chance, and it haunts him. And those are the moments that are the most pinnacle for him. That's how I took it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna say you're wrong. I think that's definitely because there is no wrong or right interpretation. So,
Yeah, because the whole Oklahoma thing, that's so important to him. And to be that level of success, how his parents put that on him, and he did have those tools because he did impress everybody. He wasn't naturally, you know what I mean? He didn't naturally have those gifts. And I think it shows at the very end where it's like maybe he didn't, or maybe those are moments, or maybe how he looked back and he saw himself those ways, you know, and
mhm.
it could be whatever. Like it could be those things, but I guess we can finish it really fast.
Yeah, well, and I think so. The very end, after all the credits, it just shows
Oh, you missed a complete big part.
which
He
part.
goes back to the janitor after we have his Oklahoma I could have been king of the world type moment, and he goes back into his car, and it's the car when the regular James and Lucy pull up to the school, there's this truck that's snowed over,
Yeah,
and there's the trash can with the ice salt in it. And when we come back with the janitor leaving after doing his day's work, or his night's work, I should say, he's scraping off the window and he goes into the car, and it looks like he has a heart attack from how I interpreted it. And he has almost like this fit, and he kind of reaches for his keys. He drops it. He shakes profusely, and he starts to take his shirt off, and he starts hearing these overlays of dialogue, and he looks through the window and he starts seeing all these things that have in his life that were happy. He sees the Tulsi Town commercial, like an animated one, and he sees this animated pig, and the pig's like, "Hey, what's up, dude?" And he's like, I
oh
think
yeah,
I'm,
I did
I,
totally forget about that.
he's like,
Yeah,
I think I'm dead or something. He doesn't say that. He just kind of goes along with the pig, and he takes all his clothes off, and the pig's just
yeah,
like,
totally.
"Hey."
Because that's what leads us to the auditorium. You're right. I forgot about that part completely.
Yeah, and the pig's dripping blood because it's the maggot pig from earlier,
Yeah,
and it's just those are like big points in his life, and you're just kind of like, man, was it this the whole time? Is he dying? Is he remembering all these things? And it's all cloudy, represented by the blizzard, and he comes back, and that's kind of it. And you see the car frozen over, still covered in snow, and then you can hear the credits are kind of blur the screen a little bit, but you can still hear
hmm
stuff happening in the background, like the
well,
movie's
yeah,
still
it's
going.
yeah, well, because if you go to all the way to the end, it actually comes back into focus, and the truck's
Hmm.
frozen over, and it's almost as if, yeah, I totally fucking forgot about that part. Because there's also like when we cut out from the stage, it goes all blue,
Hmm.
which I thought was very visually cool. It was very like Alfred Hitchcockian in a way. But then when it's I don't know, like one interpretation could be it's this man dying in a blizzard because he got
Well,
stuck. You know, he stayed too late at the school
yeah, and he froze to death in the
and
blizzard.
froze it. Yeah.
That's what I think is happening. I think it's encapsulating the movie where you got to see all his final moments, his failures in
Yeah.
life, his
This is
small
his life
victories.
flashing before his
Yeah,
eyes.
and he died in that truck, like, and then you get to see those final moments, and those are all thoughts and memories of how he maybe wanted things to play out, and that's why you see the parents change, and that's why it's all guided through Lucy's, because he's trying to, maybe that was his favorite one, and he's blurring memories, they're calling her different names, but he's just like, I remember this and I remember these good moments. And I had this conversation about the movie and she was so passionate, but it wasn't that Lucy that the viewer knows. It
Yeah.
was, she just represented that female presence in his life as how I kind of took it.
Yeah, and
And
that's why she's this young woman. So
that's even if you have subtitles on, her dialogue comes out as young woman every time. And it's just the characters that call her stuff. She gets called what was it, like Ace or Arnie or some shit? Ames. Is it Ames? Is that a pet name for me? Is that a nickname? No one's ever called me Ames. Does he mean it as me? The movie, if you pay attention, the movie tells you what it's trying to do for you. It's giving you it's dropping clues to let you follow along and be engaged intently watching this and the motivations and stuff. It does get a little confusing when it starts to make those shifts, but it lets you know it's making those shifts. And it's just kind of how you choose to watch it, you know?
For sure. And like you said, in the credits, like there is still, it's just like they've blurred the final scene, and when it pulls back out after all the credits are over, it's just a snow covered truck. Like it's like, yep, he's in there. Like he's dead in that truck.
Yeah.
So, and the other car, the other car is gone. It's, you don't.
It was never there, right? Yeah. And it makes me think. I was like, wow, maybe that was the first time he experienced death was that pig, And then that's just kind of something he held on to. So when his death came, the pig was his chauffeur to the other side, or that representation of those things, Yeah. And no, that's just kind of how I took it. I could the movie is pretty open to how the interpretation, and that's why I don't understand the horror tag. But shit, man,
that's a little too interpretive.
But I do understand the intensity and some of the uncomfortability. Like it's uncomfortable watching some of those scenes, and I could see maybe if it hits you differently, or you reflect, or you kind of just vibe and just be like, dude, I get it. Maybe that is a horrible feeling, and maybe but it's not spooky, haha horror. But it could be uncomfortable. Maybe I felt that more psychological, I guess, thrilling. Because what could happen next? What am I really watching? Interpretation, perspective.
And that's the thing is like. That's why I feel it's more in the surreal. Like, if you haven't seen a movie that's been dubbed like surreal, like if you haven't seen like Naked Lunch or Adaptation or Sadoshi, Sadoshi New York, I think is the next closest thing to this, because that thing is like fucking art inside of a movie, inside of a fucking book, inside of just like it's so meta and full of fucking layers after layer after layer that it's just like, oh, this is crazy and amazing all at once. Like if you haven't experienced that, it might seem like a horror movie, but that's more of just like it might feel that way because you're just not used to your brain being like asked to accept these things that aren't particularly like normal,
it's not
the changing of this and that.
It's not a traditional narrative is what it is. There's not, I dare even say it teeters on not even having 3 acts, and it's just kind of almost this constant in a way.
It's funny you say that because his most notable quote is, "What the fuck's a third act?" So I think that's
it's just this story is done now. It's just there's no more story left that I want to share with you. That's how it feels. And I don't know, like personally, I think it's his best movie that I have seen, which is granted is very limited. I think I couldn't recommend it because it is a very hard watch, and I don't think most people can just sit down and watch this and go, I feel like it's a more I don't get it unless you're like a film nerd or you're just into art and cinema and narratives and you understand all the subtext and the constant referencing and the constant this is from this book, this is from this play and this movie. Like if you're into that stuff, you don't even need me to, you probably already saw it before. I didn't even know it existed. Like I think people that are fans of this style of storytelling are going to just love it. And they might go, oh, it's better than this one. But it's just going to be another movie I've never fucking heard of. You know what I mean? It's just going to be in this echelon conversation of people talking about shit that I'm like, oh, I don't know, does got blow-em-ups in it? They're like, no. I'll be like, okay. But I think this is super well done. There was not one time where I was like, this is boring. I was intrigued by it. I like movies like this. I like when they're smart. I like when it forces me to pay attention. I like like I told you, the cinematography I loved. I like the use, just I don't know, just everything I found really engaging.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know this does have a select audience that it's not a
Yeah.
broad appeal. But yeah, if you even give two poops of what I think of as an opinion, just from listening, all 50 of you, to this show, I say check it out. It's only on Netflix, so you can pull the plug at any time. But be ready; it's a slow burn. It's a lot of dialogue heavy, and like I said, the performances from the two just were. I think everyone in the movie is a huge talent. Um, the two Jessies, they kill it.
Yeah.
I can't imagine them not getting either more movies like this, or just selling out and getting big blockbuster movies where they do nothing like this ever again, except for like on the weekends or something.
Yeah. I mean, I have like I would wholeheartedly recommend it, especially if you have never seen anything like it. Like I think it's good to get out of your wheelhouse. It doesn't mean I don't think everyone will enjoy it, like by any means. Like
Yeah.
When I tricked Kevin into watching this movie, I was just like, hee hee, yay, because I knew that it could probably do no. It's just one of those things where it's like I'm so infatuated with the movies he makes and the stories he tells and how he writes, and just the fact that someone like Charlie Kaufman can get this pushed through the Hollywood machine, yeah, where it's just like, I treasure that because it doesn't happen often. And so I loved every moment of it. And it was just like, it's one of those things where it's like, I could watch this movie again and probably pick up on a bunch of stuff I missed, even as much of stuff as I feel I got.
Completely. Like,
and we're not even touching on all of it because that would be boring as fuck. Like the playground and shit,
There's so many little, I don't want to say Easter eggs. There's just so many nods to what's happening in the movie that it needs to be witnessed if you're into stuff like this. And just, please understand, I don't say I don't recommend it because
no, I wasn't
it being bad. It's not a bad movie. I think it's great. God, dude, it's refreshing to see something that doesn't suck ass for once. But I know it is unique taste. It's a unique movie. And sometimes a lot of people want to watch movies to disconnect and not think. They just want to see random stuff. And that's okay too. But this is going to ask a lot from you as a viewer. So if you're ready to do that for 2 hours and 15 odds and minutes, then yeah, go for it. But so
yeah, if you're not, then this is going to be a very just harsh slap in the face. But
yeah.
And another thing, it's like it's like you said, like if you have to be kind of immersed in everything he's bringing up, like from the poetry to the art to the other movies that are referenced and stuff like that. And I think that sometimes is why I like his stuff, because then it makes me go out and be like, okay, like, I know Oklahoma, but I don't know Oklahoma.
I guess I'm watching A Woman Under the Influence.
Yeah, like exactly. Like, okay, maybe I need to watch A Woman Under the Influence. Maybe I need to read this book of poetry. Maybe I need to.
I guess I want to stop singing "Baby, It's Cold Outside" because that's about rape.
I mean, we already knew that. Like, we all knew that already. It's been like that for several years. We talked about that.
Oh man!
But
I need to get into the ballet.
But I like that it brought that up. That is a subject that's been discussed, and he didn't just like use the song and then not ignore that. Like he was like, hey, I don't know. It's just something about like the way it felt like a conversation in our real world and acknowledge the things that we all talk about and share. And that's why I kind of like his shit, because it doesn't just go, this is a movie world. All this other movie stuff doesn't exist here.
It's very real people minded. It's very grounded. It's just a different way to present something we all do. We all think. You kind of have regrets and stuff. And like I said, I could be completely off base with my hypothesis of what I witnessed. And that's why I think if you do have the time or you're ready to give it its due diligence in watching it, man, that was pretty cool. I might not ever watch it again, but man, that was a cool experience. And it's good to know movies like this can still be made. They still exist, and it's not all the same schlock. Because Jesus, there's so much schlock out there.
Yeah. So, but
Lucas Dahl was the cinematographer, so thumbs up to that guy.
yeah,
I assume that was probably his idea for the 4:3 ratio. So.
yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they're. I mean, obviously, Kaufman directed, and usually the cinematographer is like getting directed. He's not just like, how about we do it at 4:3, Kaufman? He's just like, all right, well, if I could just blow up my whole fucking movie, huh? But yeah, I mean, yeah, just visually, it's great. But I think a lot of his movies, even the ones he just writes, have a lot of good visuals because he just works with like Spike Jonze and just people that are interesting with cinematography in general. So, but yeah, that's thinking of ending things.
Me too, Dustin. Why don't you tell him where you can find more episodes of this weekly venture into movies?
Well, you can find more of us at Us Versus Movies on the Twitter, on the Instagram, on the Facebook page we never check, but mostly on Buzzsprout or wherever you get podcasts, and on YouTube, Us Versus Movies. We thank you for listening. We hope you'll subscribe to us on your favorite podcast provider or on social media. And that is all. Kevin, bid them adieu.
I'm thinking of ending things, Dustin.
All right. These are getting desperate cries for help. Just say goodbye.
Oh man, I thought I did.